check if you don't, if you cannot wait for them, they will not live for you. They're waiting. Oh, we're waiting. Okay, so if you
Good evening, America. Oh no, something happened. Stop that. Okay, find something else. Okay, we need many backup. Good morning, Philippines. Good afternoon, good evening, America. This is your regular broadcast once again. The restoration, it's hopeless. Find other videos. Okay, let's begin. You don't have any backup songs, right? Ah.
Lord, I come to you. Let my heart be changed, renewed,
Okay,
flowing from the
good morning, Philippines. Good afternoon, good evening, America. This is your regular broadcast once again. Okay, I have to stop it. Okay, look for other videos you have prepared, but you have not prepared Scott Wesley Brown. So, please share the thumbnail. Please share the thumbnail. And Barmenan, please record a backup audio, okay? Please share the thumbnail. Any Barmenan or Bar David, please share the thumbnail. Okay. So, okay, so while we are having signal problems, I think I have to record it, the audio. But if you can also record them, I'm gonna make a record for emergency purposes. So our topic today is the choosing of Barabbas, and I think you have to edit the video now because there are problems in sharing pictures. So continue sharing the pictures that I'm gonna share, but there will be no interruption this time, or very much interruption, because I think there's a problem with the signal. Okay, so our topic is about choosing Barabbas and what it the implications of choosing Barabbas. So before we begin, can I request anyone from the room to give us an opening prayer?
Okay, brother, I'll volunteer. So let's bow our head and close our eyes. So, Lord, we're here again today, Lord, in the presence, Lord. So, asking for the guidance, Lord, through Pastor uh, Francis, also with the anointing of the Holy Spirit to give us knowledge and understanding. So, Lord, I thank you again, Lord, for all the blessings that you have given us today, Lord. And forgive us for the sin that we committed, Lord. So again, Lord, I thank you, Lord, in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, let's talk about Barabbas. And if the signal returns, you may share screen um, according to your discretion. Okay, so um, so just let us, and um, I'm backing this up with a record. I hope my recorder does not fail. And if you can back up also with your audio recording, please back up also. Um, we are nearing communion, so if you can show us a picture of the communion, this is the only time of the year that God commanded us to implement the communion. Communion. Others call it a sacrament. Okay, or a communion worship. What is communion? Communion is like the Passover with the unleavened bread and the red grape wine. Passover originally does not have a red grape wine. So it is modified by Christ for the New Testament. How from the Passover unleavened bread to the New Testament communion, the important thing that should be there is the unleavened bread and the red grape wine. And communion emphasizes many things. It has hidden mysteries, hidden revelations on many things. And one of them is the death of Christ. Now, why is our topic the choosing of Barabbas? Choosing of Barabbas would end in the condemnation of Christ to be crucified. So that's one aspect of the communion, wherein Christ prophesied his return. Christ prophesied his death. The death of Christ has political implications. Our topic about Barabbas is political. Now you might think, isn't it religion and politics should not mix? Yes, temporarily. But originally, the kingdom, which is of God, is politics. So later we can ask about should we get involved in politics, okay? But that's the main subject about Barabbas. Barabbas is a political figure because he's a zealot. Zealot means a rebel freedom fighter against the Romans. If you can share screen the tabulation of SNS, and you can even if it's not showing, basing on my audio, you can still focus when you edit the video. Focus on the part of the zealots. You can highlight it there and go browse towards the right side and what its typology is. SNS tabulation is a track that we made, and if it could be shown in the video, about the different sects, sectarianism that happened in Jerusalem that day, and Judea, in Israel, under the governorship of Pilate. During those days, different parties, different groups has a counterpart representation or typology or parallel equivalent in today's groups. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, those are mainly Catholic and Protestants. The SNS, they're mostly Pentecostal and end time. Then we have the Zealots. The Zealots sometimes use religion. They, as it was in the time of Christ, the Zealots use God as a advocate for their freedom fight, from their freedom fighting rebellion. So it happened before in the time of Jeremiah, but that's not rebellion. It's somewhat kind of rebellion because the time of Jeremiah, the king of Judah, then Zedekiah, was misled by a false prophet, Hananiah, that they can break the yoke of the Babylonians. So you can, in the audio editing, can show the picture of the Babylonians, Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, and King Zedekiah, and how they did not listen to Jeremiah. They were not brilliant enough to check the evidence. God was not in favor of Israel gaining her independence, particularly the kingdom of Judah, from the Babylonians. but they used God. They used God to advocate for the freedom. So they were destroyed. They were taken into captivity. That's the chastisement of God against the kingdom of Judah. So there were no more independent Israel anymore. And Barabbas could self-style himself like the Maccabees. Well, those are some pictures I maybe did not request. I failed to request to be prepared, but you can search for it. But since you're gonna edit this video, you can put some pictures of the Maccabees. Now, who are the Maccabees? If you can show from eternity to eternity the timeline of the Maccabees is before the birth of Christ. It's 100 or so years before the birth of Christ. The Maccabees were successful as a rebel group to throw the Syrian yoke. The Syrian yoke is under the Greco-Macedonian Empire. After the death of Alexander the Great, the four generals split up the empires among them, and their descendants, Ptolemy and Seleucus, were warring with each other against the land of Israel. And Antiochus Epiphanes, then the king of the Seleucid Empire, were able to take over the Palestine, or Israel, the land of Israel. And that's where we get the topic Hanukkah, because he oppressed the religious people. He wanted the people to become much like our young people, the pagan, worldly, focus on the world, on sports, on any other things except God. So, and there were freedom fighters, rebel freedom fighters. They're called the Maccabees, and God supported those freedom fighters. So Barabbas might, as a zealot, might be using them as an inspiration. And after Barabbas, of course, there will be a real war of the Jews, as narrated by Josephus. And you can share a screen of Josephus. The war of the Jews, that's 70 AD, when Titus will destroy the temple because of that war. Started somewhere in 66 or 65 AD. So that war would destroy the temple. So you can show the temple. You can show Jerusalem being surrounded by armies. And there will be another war in 130 AD, Bar Kokhba, or Bar Kokhba in other spelling. So the Bar Kokhba rebellion, those are the spirit. So the Barabbas, the spirit of Barabbas, the topic about Barabbas is also the topic about Israel today. Israel is fighting for her survival, but she is not yet a believer of the Messiah. But God supported her, enabled her to succeed against her enemies. Now, if you look at the Essenes tabulation, so show that Essenes tabulation again. In the Essenes tabulation, you can see that there is these Herodians near the Zealots. Now, who are the Herodians? These are the political leaders of Israel. During the time of the Romans, during the time of Christ, there are the ones that allied themselves with the government of the Romans. They are the government, a puppet government of the Romans. The Jews hated Herod because he was a puppet of the Romans. That's why the older Herod, the senior Herod, remodeled the temple, beautified the temple to gain the acceptance of the Jews. And through the beautiful temple, they were temporarily able to appease some of the Jews. And these are the Sadducees. These are the Pharisees. And Christ also would also visit the temple. The Essenes also sometimes went to the temple. But there are a group of people that did not, the Essenes withdrew themselves from the city. The Pharisees could build synagogues and worship in their synagogues apart from the temple. But still they recognized the temple. But the zealots, they want a change in the government. They want to throw off the Roman yoke, much as the Maccabeans wanted to throw off the Syrian yoke, the Greek yoke, much like the King Zedekiah wanted to overthrow the Babylonian yoke. So it's the same spirit we have in choosing Barabbas. Before we talk about Barabbas, let's give some background. So try to continue sharing screen. I think if it's not, are we still live in DevCon? If you're still live, you can still use your computer. But if it's no longer live, you can use your cell phone. Okay. So, oh, there are pictures shown in the DevCon. So, okay, good. But maybe the initial part. Okay, so continue sharing your pictures in the screen. Maybe someone directly shared it. I cannot see it in the messenger room. Oh, maybe it's my signal. Huh? Never mind. Okay, but I can see some pictures in the series. So good for it. So anyway, so continuing what we're saying, but the picture's not changing too much. You still have to edit the video. So the picture's not changing. So before we talk about Barabbas, let's give some background. Let's switch our picture in the time of John the Baptist. So in the time of Pilate, if you can have that picture, in the time of Pilate, there were many rebellions already. And Pilate quashed all those rebellions. Palestine, as the Romans called it then, is a powder keg of rebellion. Anytime a riot could explode, rebellion can break out. That was the background why the chief priests were afraid of Christ. They were not just jealous, spiritually jealous of his ministry, of his success. They were afraid that the Romans would come and destroy them because they see Christ as a freedom fighter. They do not see Christ as what we know today as preaching salvation, preaching redemption, preaching even pacification, preaching submission to the Romans. Go the extra mile. If you were ordered to carry a heavy, to be a mule of the Roman soldiers, for 1 mile, give the other extra mile. Christ eventually could be labeled as a traitor to Israel. That's the purpose why they egged him. Should we pay taxes to Caesar? They want to trap him. If you choose paying taxes, then you are a traitor to Israel. If you choose not to pay taxes, then they can report Christ to be apprehended by the Roman authorities for not paying taxes. You might be a rebel. So they were supposed to trap him. So if you can show picture of search in Google, maybe I didn't prepare for that. The paying of taxes. So if you can see in the time of Christ, when he was preaching, even the message of Christ did not sound like the gospel. You know, we have denominations today, what they call the mid-acts or post-acts. They're talking about the gospel of Christ did not start until the book of Acts. During the time of the ministry of Christ, he was always mentioning the kingdom. The kingdom. I can show John the Baptist, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The picture sharing is not perfect, so you really need to edit this video. So if the kingdom of heaven is at hand, what was the mentality of Israel during the time? Their mentality was freedom from the Romans. Even right now, Jews interpret the Messiah as such. The Jews interpret the Messiah as a freedom fighter. There were even Jews today. I talked to one certain Jew cycle. He said, I know Jesus is fake Messiah because he did not change the government. He did not bring in everlasting righteousness on earth. That was the promise in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. So, in Daniel 9:24, he will bring everlasting righteousness on earth. So the Jews do not believe in Jesus Christ, much the same the one claiming to be Jew today in Judaism, because he was espousing salvation. What salvation? We don't need salvation because, like the Muslims, we don't need someone to die for our sins to receive salvation. All we need is just be good or follow God's commandments. Then you have salvation. But the salvation they're talking about is not salvation from hell. They don't have a deep, in-depth revelation about that. The Pharisees are starting to have that revelation. The Sadducees are more carnal. They're more focused on the earthly governments. If you look at the SNS tabulation, the Sadducees is similar to the Catholic Church or some older Protestant churches wherein they influence the governments. They advise the governments. And for me, there's nothing wrong advising the governments, except if you think that is already the kingdom of God. Except if you think preterist or amillennialism or post-millennialism, that is already the kingdom of God. The 1,000-year reign is symbolical, representing the spiritual advices to the government. So again, let me repeat, there's nothing wrong to join politics to help in the government. What, like JIL, the son of Eddie Villanueva, is involved in the government. There's nothing wrong if he runs for president. The thing is, do not be short-sighted on God's prophecy. The same as Barabbas was, the same as the Sadducees was, the same as the Herodians was, and the same as Judas and the rest of the disciples was. Even the disciples thought that it is a political kingdom that will be the first one to be restored. They didn't understand the spiritual kingdom first, that there must be a restoration, the redemptive part, the fall of Adam. They didn't realize the fall of Adam infected their blood. Everyone was born in sin. They just know Adam's fall as just historical. They didn't realize there needs to be redemption through his blood, redemption in our blood, in our sin, in our ingrained sin. We were born in sin. That's something they do not realize. So, so good picture, like the Sadducees. So good to look back at other albums. So if the people misunderstood the message of Christ, they can even misuse the words of Christ. Christ, in the initial part of Christ's preaching, if you can look back in my previous video, the Gospel of the Kingdom, you can search for it. The message of Christ seems to be the restoration of a political kingdom, starting from the words of John the Baptist. Behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's the same message of the SNS. If you could study the SNS, they had a progressive revelation wherein the The God will usher in His kingdom in their time. That was during the silent years in between the testaments, and before during the time of Christ, the Essenes were very prevalent, but they're in the outskirts, not in the city. They had a message. They had a apocalyptic message. They were the first end time believers. They had the first end time message. It was from their ranks that John the Baptist came. It was from their ranks. If you think only John the Baptist was the one living in the wilderness, no. He had many of them. But John the Baptist was a prophet that distinct from the Essenes. He had the progressive revelation. He would come to know the Messiah. When the Messiah would start his ministry, the message was about the kingdom. You can search many references him mentioning about the kingdom, and the mentality of Israel then was about the kingdom. They want, when Jesus gave them bread supernaturally, it gave them a revelation that he is the promised king of Israel, and they want to make him king. They got that right, that Christ was the Messiah, but they didn't think about the Messiah of our blood, of redemption on the cross. They think of a Messiah of changing the governments. Remember the blind man, "Thou son of David, have mercy on me." Why did he call him son of David? Because he was the son of a king. He's of a lineage of the king. That's what they know. They accepted Christ then. The throngs of people, the thousands of people that followed him because of the miracles, they thought of him as a king. Then after thinking of him as a king, it could come to their mind that he could throw off the Roman yoke. And when Judas witnessed the power of Christ, it can show some pictures of Judas. When Judas had witnessed the power of Christ, that no one could kill him. Many times the Jews, there's some element of Jews that wanted to kill him, but were unable to. And they even had power over the scorpions, the devils, the spirits. Then he developed an insidious plan. Insidious, I call it insidious because people think Judas wanted Christ dead. I call it insidious because against God, it was against God. In the eyes of men, it will be perfectly all right. You see that mostly in the movies. You do something wrong, but in the end, it justifies the means. Judas thought if Christ could not be killed, if he would betray him to the authorities, Christ would be forced to use his power to thwart the authorities. The authorities, the corrupt authorities, represent that is a puppet government of the Romans. The Herodians, a puppet government. The Sadducees is a puppet religion, just to appease the people. Judas thought that he could usher in the kingdom by betraying him. Now, my previous colleague did not believe that because he said Judas was only after the money. He was not sincere. Now, the answer to that, why did Judas repent when he realized his plan backfired? When he realized it was not going according to his plan, he returned the money. So, my previous colleague, his name was Jun Elevera, he he had no answer for that. His excuse was just because he was his friend before. That's why he cried about. Did he have a change of heart? So it's against his belief that Judas could have a change of heart. No, it was not a change of heart. It was originally his plan. Judas was not the only one. I talked to Brother Jackson. He said that like Peter, his mind was just clouded by the devil. He was just deceived. And Peter was also among those deceived. What did Peter say to Christ when Christ repeatedly talked about his death? Peter told him, "Far it be," that's Matthew 16, if you can find it. You Google it, Matthew 16, that's in the Passover, the communion. That's during the communion. So you can look for that. But wait, there's some noise. Let me mute a moment. Can I request someone to mute? Can I request someone to mute the microphone? It will be recorded in DevCon. So have you muted them already? Okay, thank you for the mutation of the mic. Okay, now silencing of the mic. So I'm monitoring. DevCon has catch top of the picture. Okay, back to what we're talking about. So Judas, his plan backfired because his plan is the same aspirations as Peter, John, James, and all the other apostles, and all the people following him because of the miracles. Can I request the camera to be turned off? A sister, who is the sister? Is this Farisha? Please turn off the camera because it could be shown in the series, okay? You would be displaying yourself in the series broadcast. Okay, back to where we're saying. Judas is no different from the other apostles. They all wanted the kingdom, the same as Barabbas did. It's just that they had different approaches. The Herodians had a different approach, cooperation with the Romans, the same with the Sadducees. The Pharisees is somewhat progressing a little. They wanted to have the kingdom spiritually in their synagogues. You don't need to go to the physical temple. So they're the ones that have this progressive revelation. It's not the building, it's the spirit. Okay? It was their improvisation that on the Sabbath you go to their synagogue to study instead of just staying at home. It's a progressive revelation. Instead of just staying at home, although Christ would have no condemnation for those who stayed at home. When Christ was embalmed, it was a Saturday on the Sabbath. Mary Magdalene and the other Marys stayed at home according to the commandment. Matthew chapter 28 or 27. Okay. So, the kingdom misconception is the issue even during the ministry of Christ. Christ had to escape the people wanting to make him king. Several times you can read that in the Gospels. So that was the background, that was the setting. Now, remember what Pilate said. Did you know that I have the power to free you? Did you know that Pilate is a ruthless person? He does not care for any justice. Pilate can kill innocent people just to quash a rebellion, just to instill fear to the people. He doesn't care if you're innocent, as long as it gives fear to the people to have peace, like Vlad the Impaler, the one that started Dracula. And other communistic countries that are autocratic, that are ruthless, oppressor, like North Korea, etc. They instill fear. If one of your family member commits a crime or goes against the state, all the rest of your family members will go to the gulag, to prison camps, to work concentration camps. That instills fear. That's what Pilate was, because he destroyed many rebellions already. He quashed many rebellions already. But surprisingly, in the time of when he was presented with Christ, the Sadducees, they thought that when they apprehended Christ, and they wanted to bring him to Pilate to be condemned, because they could not take it by their own hands for fear of the people, because he's very popular already. And of course, the government of the Romans does not allow you to kill by your own religion. You have to pass through the government. much like today, we cannot take the matters in our law in our own hands. We have to report it to the authorities. He committed a crime. So they reported Christ to Pilate. He wants to become king. He's against Caesar. You have to kill him, or else he will spark a rebellion. But Christ is innocent of the charge of rebellion. And Pilate asked him, "Are you king? Are you king of the Jews?" And the answer of Christ says, "If I were the king, would they have treated me this way?" And Pilate remarked, "Well, I don't want to be the king of the Jews." How they treated their own king. So Pilate told him, "Did you know I have the power to free you?" Now, why did Pilate suddenly have this merciful heart against Christ? It is to give us an example. Why did a dream happen to Pilate's wife that Christ is innocent of the charge of rebellion? It's not because for Pilate to save Christ. Maybe that's the traditional thought. It is to give us an example about us. Pilate gives us a lesson. Barabbas gives us a lesson. The people that chose Barabbas gives us a lesson. What is that lesson? You cannot prevent prophecy. Pilate tried his best because of the dream of his wife. He tried his best to save Christ from the gallows, from the death penalty. Even though Christ is not that type of person, even with a slight suspicion, even if the person is innocent, he had no second thoughts of killing them, murdering them, slaughtering them, massacring even families or groups of people. But here, Christ and his followers, Pilate had a change of heart. He wanted to free Christ. Now, did you know Pilate wanting to free Christ is similar to Peter once said over his dead body that Christ would die. Christ told Peter during communion that he would die. And not just during communion, many times over. And I have another subject maybe next week. The woman with the alabaster box. She's the only one that understood the message of Christ, that he would really die. The others do not believe that Christ would die. Even Judas was a witness of his power, supernatural power, miraculous power. Why would he die? Even Christ confirmed that. Did you know I can call 12 legions of angels? Why do you take the sword? It was rebuking Peter for chopping off Malchus' ear. Why? Did you know I can call 12 legions of angels? The will of the Father must be fulfilled. It is the will of the Father. If you think it's the people that killed me, the Romans that killed me, or Judas, or the authorities, or the Sadducees, no. It was God, and it was because of you. That's for another topic. Who killed Christ? But I don't think we're going to make it in one of the Sundays of this communion. So, after the communion, my topic would be the photographic evidence of Christ's resurrection. But right now, our topic about the political setup in Israel during that time. So, what was the political scene, and how does it affect us? What is this connection to communion and this Passover or the death of Christ? The connection is very profound, and we have to be beren, to dig deep, to see the beauty of God's revelation of his mystery. There's a mystery hidden in it. So it's no accident that Pilate wanted to free Christ. God was showing that you cannot prevent it. Did you know it was Christ who told Pilate, you cannot prevent what was already written? Did you know I have the power to free you? And Christ told him, no, you cannot. It's beyond your power. And Pilate tried. And you know, it was his own people, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin. It was they that pressured Pilate. If you try to free Christ, we're going to report you to Caesar that you are a traitor. So Pilate was afraid. Oh, My hands are tied. But he thought of another way. He thought of freeing Jesus in the Passover, because that was always the practice of freeing a prisoner in the Passover, just to appease the Jews. That has been a practice yearly. And this practice, he thought of that way to free Jesus. He knew Jesus was innocent. He knew Jesus was innocent. He was not guilty of this charge of rebellion. The Sadducees could not use religious beliefs to charge Christ. So they had to use the charge of rebellion, that he wanted to be king. The Zealots, of course, want Christ to be on their side. And the people are ready to join the Zealots in rebellion. Remember, during the time, the Zealot rebellion is not yet full-blown. And it was not yet in the 60s, 67, 65, 66, 67. It's still in the 30s, 33 AD. So, the Zealots were still an isolated groups that wanted to rebel. But through the throng of people following Christ, they could easily swell their numbers. They wanted him to be on their side. Most people wanted him to be on their side. But Christ was on the side of truth. That should be our right attitude. Between all these denominations, we have to be objective. What is biblical truth? Regardless of whatever affiliation you came from. If you follow the truth, then you are a true child of God. If you are loyal to one particular group, then you will have discrimination against another. Then you are Nicolaitan, you are not true. During the time of Christ, there are sectarianism, from political to religious. And Pilate wanted to free Christ. He could not. He found he could not. Because when he tried to free Christ on the Passover, they chose Barabbas. Let me give some background. Remember when Caiaphas said, it would be better for one man to die than the whole nation perish. So one man must be sacrificed so that the whole nation will be saved. Because if not, the Romans would come and destroy our city, our sanctuary, our government, our lifestyle. If we allow this Jesus Christ to flourish, it will explode into an open rebellion, and the Romans will come and destroy us. You know what Caiaphas said would come true, but not because of Christ, because of Barabbas. When they chose Barabbas, now how did they choose Barabbas? It was also the fault of the priests. They coaxed the people to choose Barabbas. And these are Jews that can easily be disillusioned with Christ because he's not preaching a message of rebellion. Now, it shows that the priests, even though they wanted the Roman authorities to remain to help them remain in power, they also played a double agent, a double face, a double standard. They try, as long as it makes people hate Jesus Christ, they played the feelings of the people to look upon Christ as a false Messiah. That's why they said, free Barabbas, but crucify him. Pilate said, what should I do with this person called Christ? So the picture is no longer changing in DevCon. I'm sorry, in the series. The broadcast already stopped. Oh, it's still continuing. Okay, now, Pilate did not know what to do with Christ if he would not be freed. They said, crucify him. Now, who taught the people that? It was the Pharisees, the Sadducees. The Pharisees and the Sadducees coaxed the people, much like today. Here in the end time message, I personally experienced this.
Brother, I have a quick question.
Let me finish my last statement. The Pharisees, here in the end time message, there are different factions who do not agree with each other. But they would join one with another just to condemn me as against the prophet, against the message. They would put their differences aside. Same thing here. The Pharisees, the Pharisees and the Sadducees are not comfortable with the zealots. They do not want the zealots because, as Caiaphas said, it would come and destroy. It would come and destroy Jerusalem because the Romans would get angry if this rebellion do break out. So what happened? They even coaxed the people to free Barabbas instead of Christ because they see Christ as a worst enemy. The same here in the end time message. Even though they have their theological opponents, different factions, but they would agree with each other that I am the enemy. So they would temporarily pretend to be like the sympathetic to the zealots, just to let the Barabbas free. And Barabbas would really foment rebellion. I'm not saying he's the leader of the zealots, but freeing him gave a spirit in Israel that eventually the whole of Israel will join in the rebellion. And the Sadducees will lose their temple. The Herodians would lose their government. That will happen, the same as what happened to King Zedekiah. So that was the picture then. Now later we're going to talk about Pilate washing his hands. Brother Enoch, could you please proceed with your question?
So you mean, brother, the Sadducees and the Pharisees have the you mean they have the power to control the government? That's what you're saying, right?
A little. That's what we call the Sanhedrin. The Romans allowed a pool of, like Republicans we have today, a pool of like Democrats and Republicans. The Sadducees and the Pharisees have equal seats in the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is a council or a body of people that decides for the self-governance, the internal domestic matters of the people, especially it's connected to religious life and a little politics, of course, interplayed with Herod. Herod is the political figure as the king then. So that's to answer your question. So is it clear, Brother Enoch?
Yes, brother. Thank you.
Okay, now let's continue. So it was the Sadducees combined with some Pharisees that compelled Pilate to condemn Christ. It was them who tried to. It was they who tried to influence Pilate in his decision. Pilate wanted to free Christ, so Pilate might have realized he was a man of peace. Pilate is what we can see as compromiser. Some people might see our message is not wrong, but because majority, the big timers, the big shots are against this message, they would keep silent. They would not stand for the truth. Pilate is one example of a person who does not want to stand for the truth. He's afraid because the big shots are against this message or against me. So they would not vouch for me. They would not defend me. So in the time of Christ, when they chose Barabbas, there are a few who wanted to free Christ. But of course, they were outnumbered. They were muffled down. So the majority of the people were convinced, persuaded that Christ was fake through the influence of the religious authorities. When Judas betrayed Christ, it was as though he was siding with the religious authorities. He wanted the religious authorities to recognize Christ. Eventually, it was not his plan that Christ would be condemned to death. The plan of Judas was for Christ to manifest his supernatural power as the Messiah, and the religious authorities, his loyalty was still with the religious authorities, but his heart was broken when the religious authorities turned on Christ. We have people today who are compromisers. They do not want to offend the big shots, the religious authorities. So they're afraid to tell the big shots that they've done something wrong against this message, or they were being Nicolaitan. They destroyed some of the lives of some families who are um, struggling in their family training. So here in I see even these big shot authorities. They were my previous disciples. They could even tolerate false doctrines among their ranks as long as it goes against me. So he had a pastor that uh, believed an extreme form of the end time message that Laodicea church age is over. But it's all right for him as long as they are against me, that they will not listen to me anymore. That's his influence. So it's the same as the Sadducees and the Pharisees, who were even though they hated each other, they hated Christ even more, to the point that they would join forces against Christ, and they would compel the people. They will tell their followers to choose Barabbas. To choose Barabbas. Now later we're going to talk about what is the implication of choosing Barabbas. Now, but let's talk about Pilate washing his hands. Now, what about Pilate washing his hands? It is a type of not admitting to guilt, not admitting to responsibility. What was the message of Christ? Pilate might think, history tells us that he became insane, that he was not able to free an innocent man. That says maybe some historical hearsays. But the thing here is, Pilate did not understand. The Jews did not understand. Even the disciples did not understand. It's not about Christ, the innocence of Christ. It's about the plan of God to pay for the sins of the world. Even though some people did not want him to die, he has to die. Even though Christ did not want to die, he has to obey God. That's the message. Pilate did not want to have anything to do. Of course, he's a Gentile, he's a pagan, Gentile. He did not want to have anything to do with Christ. It's not his fault that the Jews wanted to kill him. We have people today who do not want to have anything to do with Christianity. But there's the witness of God. It has something to do with you. The deists, who are similar to the people in Acts chapter 17 at Mars Hill, to the unknown God. They recognize there's a God, but they don't want to delve into deeper things of his revelation in the Bible. These are like the people of the world. They know there's God. They have nothing against Christ, but they don't want to take a stand. Oh, which is the right one? Catholic, Protestants, Pentecostals, end time. Which religion is true? Oh, I don't have any religion. Okay, I'm agnostic. I'm deist. Any religion will do, but religion is just man-made. Of course, majority are. So they don't have a stand. They just wash their hands. I just try to be good. I'm good. I'm not responsible. So it's a lesson for us. Many of us are washing our hands. We do not want to take a stand in here in Hukum Counseling Ministry, Judge Counseling Ministry in the church. We do not want to take a stand between different end time differences, which is right, which is wrong. We don't want to share even the communion to them because we're afraid that they might be offended against us. So we have to take a stand. If God gave us a message, we have to take a stand, much like the disciples. Eventually, they repented from their error, and Judas committed suicide. So Pilate washing his hands is trying to remove himself from any responsibility. But the responsibility is not in freeing Christ. The responsibility is knowing Christ. Why? That's the responsibility. That's the message. That's the reason for the dream. You have to know why. Why can't you prevent him from dying? Why did the Jews hate him? There's an underlying message. God was actually convicting Pilate and his wife. We don't know if she became a Christian, but God was convicting them to know the message. And do not wash your hands from the message. When God shares to you something progressive, something you did not know, even though you're farther off than the Jews, you're a pagan, like Cornelius, you can still receive the mysteries of God. God is talking to you. So let's move on. What is the implication when they chose Barabbas? This is the implication. They said, his blood be on us and on our children. What does that mean? If ever there would be some errors in judgment, ever there will be a fallout from this decision, they would gladly take the blame. I have a previous disciple that was converted against to those who are against me. They got my whole savings. Now they're willing to stake their revelation not to return the money to me, because they think I'm a false prophet, I'm a false teacher, because they were convinced I'm a false preacher. They're willing in the face of God to do that. Why? Because they think what they're deciding was right. Oh, we have no guilt if we do not return the money because he's a false prophet and he owes us more. They may spin out a story that the person damaged them more than they should pay him back. So that's a false revelation. How did that revelation come about? Because of the hatred imbued in them. Now, why am I using this as an example? When the Jews said, his blood be on us and on our children, they were betting, they were staking a claim that what they believed in was true, that he's a false prophet, he deserved to die. And if ever we committed a mistake, we're ready to answer for it. And answer for it they did. What happened to their nation and what happened to different countries. If you can show some pictures of the pogroms. What are the pogroms? In the different countries that they were scattered upon, they were persecuted. Everywhere they go, they were persecuted. There are some short time of peace, but majority of the time they were persecuted, and they didn't understand why. It started from them. When I talked to John Seigel, I told him the Jews were chastised for what they did to the Messiah. Much like in the parable, when the owner of the vineyards were sent to the stewards to claim, they killed the son of the owner. And the owner was so angry for the king, he sent his troops to kill the stewards. That happened to Israel. Something very terrible that happened to Israel. Later we're going to get into that. You can watch my other video, Pray That Your Flight Be Not on the Sabbath. That video talks about what happened to Jerusalem then, during the rebellion of the Zealots. In choosing Barabbas, I'd like to use a typology. This sentiment of the Jews, these are present among the people today. Some Muslims are willing to sacrifice their life in killing other people. They think killing other people is doing the right thing. And they shut their minds from understanding what is right. Or some of them have awoken, but majority shut their minds to the point they're willing to die as suicides, a martyr's death for their jihad. The same thing for some nations today who are willing to die for their country. So there are people who sacrifice their lives for their country. Some people sacrifice their lives for their religion. And let's move on to those people who are not sacrificing their lives. We have a similar spirit in the churches today, the Nicolaitan spirit. This is a fanatical spirit that most people do not realize. What is this Nicolaitan spirit? It's a conquering spirit in the minds of the laity that they would not prove what is right and wrong. They just decided that the group that they are in is the truth or is enough for them to get them to heaven. That's closed-mindedness. We have this today. Even those who do not belong are active in some denominations. Whenever I post in DevCon, they always reject it. They don't want to hear it out. They don't want to listen about it. I post it in Debaters of Faith. They always reject it. Maybe some accidents, some are approved, but majority are rejects. And how about other groups? When I post there, some groups outright rejects it without checking it out. Now, some groups, to be fair, check it out and allows it. I'm talking about this Nicolaitan spirit is similar to the spirit when the Jews were so sure that they were not wrong, that they were willing to stake their nation and their children's future against this claim that he was a false prophet. They're not barren. They judged out of emotion. Their hatred was just developed. And when he was crucified, the more they had this cause, he's a fake Messiah. He was crucified. Is that a true prophet, a true Messiah? Even the Muslims think that way. Okay, would God allow his prophet or his servant to be crucified, to die a shameful death, a criminal's death? People, this is a spirit of emotionalism that you are willing to destroy the future even of your children. Now let's apply to our own local church. We have families, we have parents, because of emotionalism, they would sacrifice their children's spiritual future. It went out into full-blown rebellion, as what Caiaphas prophesied, predicted. The Romans sent their armies and destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Daniel 9:27. So, not just that. It happened again in 130 AD under Bar Kokhba. And Jerusalem was totally leveled. The people were thoroughly scattered. To the point it was only Arabs, mostly Arabs, that lived in Palestine. And what happened to the Jews when they went to different countries? They were able to settle down and live a modest life. Eventually, the authorities, there's a spirit among them, not just Hitler, but the spirit in Hitler was present in many different kings. If you can show a picture of the pogroms, the sufferings, the persecutions of the Jews endured, that is the implication of when we said, his blood be on us and on our children. Now, fast forward in the future, Israel became a nation once again. Now, if you look at the SNS tabulation, the spirit of Barabbas, I should have put Barabbas there, the zealots were similar to the Israeli. There is an Israeli commando or special ops. It's called the Mossad. They're willing to go against the law just to get revenge. Like the Olympics, those who engineered the Olympics massacre, they sought revenge. Even the Nazis, they tried to seek out those surviving Nazis that have escaped prosecution. They tried to bring them to justice. If not through trial, then through assassination. If the Mossad can do that, that's the same spirit as the zealots. If you can look at the tabulation, if you can show the tabulation. Now, what does that have to do with our message here in the communion? Because we are now in the end times. You should understand that Christian groups who are involved in politics but lost sight of prophecy, they're like that spirit. You might be a Sadducee type, a Pharisee type, you might be a Zealot type. If you are an activist, you want always to protest. That is the spirit of Barabbas. You might not be in an open rebellion, or you might not even be an anarchist. But if you stake your life for some ideology, and even it could be a good ideology, to protest, that's the spirit. Because If only in this life we have hope, we of all men are most miserable. And look at the people today. And this is what communists focused upon. What is the meaning of your life? Why do you live? Oh, I live to make Philippines a great nation again. I live for my denomination. I live for this ideology, like not economic. Economic is livelihood, but there is this nature. What do they call it? Ecological. We are some have become ecological terrorists, protesters. Remember, there was a time uh, they uh, they put some paint on some expensive paintings. So uh, that is what we call, because of saving the planet, for the cause of saving the planet. We call that ecological terrorists. You are fighting for something that is good, but only for this earth, for this present lifetime. It's no different for you joining the government, because your message is already good governance, Diyos at bayan. What does it focus upon? God and the nation. And Eddie Villanueva will always quote, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." So that's the message. That's the main message. But did you know no nation today is 100% of God? If you derive your leadership by vote, then it's automatically by the people, the voice of the people. The voice of the people is not always the voice of God. Maybe partially, but not thoroughly. So it's a
Brother,
deception.
I have another question.
Okay.
So how about the Nineveh?
That Nineveh is a good example. The leadership followed the advice of Jonah and they were saved. But did they remain saved? Eventually, they were destroyed by the Babylonians. It was for a short time. You can advise kings. As I said, you must follow prophecy. If you follow prophecy, you can have temporal peace. So it's not against for Christians to join politics, or maybe a slight protest, not a major protest. But if
Oh,
the government is evil, just submit. Do not go. If you follow God, your mission here on earth is not to foment rebellion, even though the government is unjust. That was in the time of the Romans and the Babylonians, even Nineveh. They've done unjust things, and God was willing to forgive them if they repented. But that's temporal, no? Um, it's not permanent. There's a kingdom here on earth. There's a government here on earth. This is a misconception that there is a government here on earth that will continue forever just because of democracy. You're doing God's will. No, democracy is not perfectly God's will. It's God's tolerance. God just allowed it, like Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 4:25. Read that verse. The God of heaven allowed that kingdom for you to flourish. Nebuchadnezzar thought it was by his own hands he accomplished all these things. And God rebuked him, made him crazy for 7 years. Because to show him, no, governments today exist because of God, not because of their own hands. They might think it was in their own hands, much like Pilate. Did you know I can free you? No. What God has ordained in his own hands, you could not change. What you see is happening right now is under the control of God. And people might get up in their arms in about carbon, CO2, uh, uh, warming the planet, and many other things. Asteroid hit. Did you know our life here on Earth is under the hands of God? A small degree of change between the sun and the moon in the Earth, a slight tilt, could develop into an extinction event. There are many asteroids the scientists discovered Anyone could hit us any moment, and we could all suddenly die, and they could do nothing to prevent it. They're daydreaming of one day having some super technological power to prevent it. No, it was God who's preventing it. Even he who let will let until he be taken out of the way. The message is this: God is all in control. What you have to do, just follow God. It was God's plan for him to be crucified. When they chose Barabbas, they chose the pogroms, they chose the sufferings. And blindness in part is happened to Israel so that the fullness of the Gentiles become in. That's the plan of God. You say fullness of the Gentiles, it includes some Jews, some Israelites there, but it calls all nations and tribes and tongues, some element of people out of all nations, not just one nation. God is not biased. So what is its relevance to our message? The communion typology involves politics, it involves the end time, involves eschatology, it involves, when you talk about prophecy, you also talk about politics, you talk about geopolitical events. What happened in the past and what's happening in the present and what's going to happen in the future, it's all laid down in the Bible as a great plan of God. We may not see everything as perfect yet, but God has a plan. God has it in control. Now, what is our role when we do the communion in this Passover? We connect ourselves with the people in the time of Barabbas and Christ. Which would we choose? Of course, those who chose Christ didn't even understand that Christ has to die. So choose the woman with the alabaster box. She may not understand the resurrection and many other things, but she believed his message, and she was sorrowful. She was sorrowful that her Messiah would die. She was grateful for the Messiah because her sins were forgiven. She was a sinner, and she was given another new lease in life. Some said she was Mary, the sister of Martha. Some said she was Mary Magdalene, or the woman that was about to be stoned to death. Whoever she was, she had a repentant heart. And that's supposed to be our hearts today. When we understand the lessons about Barabbas, we can tell our Christian friends how not to miss the whole picture, how to get your life right alongside with God. Some of my brethren in the church and their children, they might not be involved in politics, but they couldn't care less. They couldn't care less about prophecy. And this is the message. You should care. Not because you should waste all your life in politics or in this earth idealistic ideology, or a protester or an activist. No. But you must also not be indifferent, lukewarm, or like Pilate washing his hands. You should know what is the plan of God. What is the plan of God in store for you? The woman with the alabaster box got it right. Though she might not understand everything, but she got the message of Christ that he was about to die. She might not understand why yet. But what about the disciples who are mocking the woman sacrificing her fortune for that expensive perfume for Christ's death? They didn't believe Christ would die. They missed out on the picture because they were after the kingdom. Acts chapter 1 verse 6. Wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom back to Israel? So they missed the whole picture. And today we have people that miss the whole picture. Many in the denominations, churches today have become involved in earthly matters, in charities. I'm not saying it's bad to give charity, but their vision is only up to that point, even using that to promote themselves. And some are involved in politics for good governance. Now, there are some churches who do not involve themselves with that, but they're Nicolaitan. They do not want to hear the progressive truth. And we have brethren in the church who are lukewarm, who do not see the emergency that they need to train their children. They need to train themselves for the work of God, for the ministry. was a direct result from the choosing Barabbas. And it was the plan of God. And communion also celebrates the coming of Christ in his kingdom. That's political. So what is the right message, political message today? That government we have today is temporal. Christ will still come and take over the world. That is the gospel of the kingdom. And we are not preaching it yet. Maybe some people would not tolerate that. In some other countries, you might during the communion, the Passover. Eventually, their children were killed. That should be the message. That should be we should be worried for our families. We should be worried for our brethren in the church because they do not do the right communion. They do not understand the implications of this communion. And even this message about Barabbas, it has something to do with us. It has something to do with our relationship with this present world, whether it be political, ecological, technological, economic, whatever it is, whatever your hobbies is on the world. Sometimes it becomes our idolatry. I call it a psychological idolatry. And during the time of Barabbas, they also had idolatry. Though they call the God of Israel, Jehovah, but they missed the message. That's idolatry. You use the name of God, but you missed this message. You didn't really follow him. That's when Christ said, I never knew you, you workers of iniquity. He only knows those who do the will of the Father. So, who are those doing the will of the Father? Move on in the progressive truth. Make that your priority in life, the resurrection of Christ. You should be living as though you would be part of that resurrection. How? You should be witnessing to others. You should be having spiritual communion in your families. As we do the physical communion, let's remind ourselves that we need to do spiritual communion with our families. As ye see the day approaching, Hebrews 10:25, that's communion. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. That's communion. But as you see the day approaching, but admonishing one another, exhorting one another. That's communion, spiritual communion. And we are not doing that exactly. We're only admonishing on the shallow things. What shall we cook today? Oh, how old is your child? Did you know that you can have discounts on this? That's the communication we have. We don't talk about the deep things of God. We don't even reckon their need for training in their families. We just accept what comes how, what happens to our children. So we need to get back. This year's communion, we have to have a restoration. We need re-evaluation. We need to have reflection of what we have done. For the rest of the year, we might have forsook God. And we might have seen politics play out, and we don't know prophecy. We could not relate in prophecy. You do not see God is speaking to you through those politics happening. The parallels. Okay, the rest, we have 27 or 25 minutes to go. Maybe some of you have some questions. So let's devote our time to question and answers. I hope you can play a good music this time. Find other music, Brother JP, to prepare. Okay, anyone in the room who wish to ask questions about the subject?
I have some comments, Brother Francis, and of course, a little bit question.
Okay, okay.
Okay, I believe Israel's mentality, they after the political kingdom.
Amen.
And although they shouted Barabbas, should release from imprisonment and wanted Christ to reign, to be the king, and to restore
Yes.
political kingdom. Are you saying, Brother Francis, Israel shouted, choosing Barabbas' release because they afraid of lots of rebellion, riot exploded in that time? As you thought that Herodians, political leaders of Israel, because of this, they wanted Jesus Christ manifest his supernatural power to gain Israel from political state.
Okay, do not mix the people involved. I did not put everything in the SNS. I should have put Barabbas and Judas there. Judas is the one who wanted Christ to manifest his supernatural power to throw off the Roman government, the Herodian government, but they still remain loyal to the Sadducees temple. Christ sometimes acknowledged the temple. Christ also gave money to the temple. So Christ visited the temple, even cast away the people selling in the temple. And the people that chose Barabbas were deceived. You know the verse that twice the child of hell, because they don't know anything about it. We have people, even our own ranks, twice the child of hell. They didn't understand why they should hate me. They know they should not return my money because they just memorized I'm a false teacher. Okay? So who did that? So it was not the people who thought that Christ would not become, is not a real king. They're not as deep as Caiaphas and Annas. The chief priests were the one who thought that way, that Christ is more dangerous than Barabbas, that Jesus is more dangerous than Barabbas. Why? Because they think in Christ, rebellion would immediately start. They don't know Christ was a pacifier. They didn't even hear his message that he was a pacifier. Much like a pastor told me, you're always contradicting Pastor D. But he was not there. He did not want to check it out. He just want to frame me up. So the chief priests framed up Jesus Christ in the mind of the people. So the people just memorized what the chief priests instructed them to do. Afraid, avoid that person. Do not talk to him. Do not follow his instructions. So what happened? Choose Barabbas instead of Jesus, because he's the one that's gonna plunge the nation into rebellion. So the people did not know anything about that. They didn't understand as deep as Caiaphas did, that Christ is dangerous. They know they might think eventually he's a false prophet because he died. Because did you know during that time when Peter converted thousands, there are still the majority of Israel did not believe in Jesus Christ. Though they converted thousands, they did not convert the whole of Israel. That's why Paul said in Romans chapter 10, I would that all Israel will be saved. Because they had a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. So that means say, after the conversion of 3,000, 5,000, it's no more. They might think they were on the roll. Acts 6, 7, you might think many of the priests became believers, but not all, not all. The majority is still being held by the Sadducees. They were successful in closing the minds of their constituents. Much like today. My detractor was successful in closing the minds of all pastors against me. Almost all.
Francis, answer me directly. Answer me directly, Brother Francis. They choose Barabbas because they afraid. You said a while ago that in that time lots of rebellion is there, and they shouted Barabbas because they afraid of the rebellion riot exploded in that time. Is that
Brother Eric, let me repeat my answer because you missed that part. You missed that part when I said that. They did not understand it. You thought they understand it. No, it was the chief priests who thought of that. The people will just spoon feed what the chief priests said. So the people were deceived. They did not understand it completely. Not necessarily everyone is the same understanding, but not everyone is very deep. Even the disciples of Christ is not very deep. They didn't understand it also. The others wanted to save Christ. The others want to condemn Christ because he was supposedly false, just like that, false. Just because I am false, I don't deserve to use my savings. And I can just be framed with any kind of accusation that I even owe them money. Okay? So, the same thing here. The people did not understand what Caiaphas understood. The people were actually is also vulnerable to the zealots. The people, but Christ would prevent them from doing that. When they wanted to make Christ king, that is an open rebellion. But Christ escaped from them. So it gives them disillusionment. Unless you eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, oh, this is a fanatic. This is not a freedom fighter. Let's just leave him. And they are fertile grounds for the Pharisees and the Sadducees to implant doubt, to implant Nicolaitanism, to change their minds in a close-minded way that Christ is false, so that they will follow the instruction to choose Barabbas. They didn't understand about this rebellion thing. They were innocent. They could also be seduced to the zealots. If they were able to make Christ king at that time, it would be an open rebellion. And the fears of the chief priests will come true. But they didn't understand the plan of God. They were not Berean. So the chief priests were thinking they were trying to save the nation. The people that followed them may not understand it, but they were trying to save the nation. Let me use an example in this present time. Some governments think that people must not know about the aliens because it will throw the whole society on Earth into turmoil. So they have to be kept secret. So let them believe a myth so that they will be safe. It's like that. They don't understand everything. Just follow the orders. Just follow us. Like the Communist Party in China. Just follow us. Everything will be good. You might understand it right now. Now God is also like that. Now the governments are also like that. But in the time of the Caiaphas, the chief priests, they're also like that. But the chief priests were Nicolaitan. So the people could have a chance to be Berean. Of course, that would come later in the ministry of the apostles in Jerusalem. There will be persecutions, and there will be those who rejected Christ will come back. But not all of them. Majority, as Paul said, did not believe. And eventually, they might think, like Caiaphas. Later, they might come to think the revelation of Caiaphas rang true. 40 years later, in 70 AD, they will be chastised by God. It will be the opposite.
Okay, brother. I also
Okay.
Okay, brother. Why do you say that the woman with the alabaster perfume has the revelation that Christ will die? Why do you say that?
Because the disciples were not in agreement with the woman. The disciples, look at Peter. Far it be from thee that it will happen to thee. Over my dead body that you will be arrested and killed, condemned to death, and die a shameful criminal's death. Peter said that. And why did Judas return the money? Even Judas thought that way. What did the disciples say in Acts 1:6? Would thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? They were not thinking yet of this gospel salvation, of our redemptive plan. They were thinking of a literal kingdom. Even after his resurrection, they thought he was about to restore the physical, literal kingdom. So it's safe to assume that during his ministry, they did not believe Christ would die. Remember, there's a woman who approached him, could my two sons be your left and right ministers when you become king? She was wanting to put her position in the kingdom, like earthly governments, palakasan, the government. nepotism. And Christ told them, are they willing to endure what I will endure? Are they willing to drink the cup that I will drink? To be baptized in fire? The woman did not know following Christ will bring untold hardships and persecutions and trials and tribulations, martyrdoms, eventually. So they thought it was a good kingdom, everything would be good. That's also our misconception. When we take our communion, we must think, before everything becomes good, it is bad. Right now we are bad because we are ignorant of God's plan. And there's something coming around the corner that's gonna be a chastisement to our families, whether they're left in the tribulation, left in the rapture, or in this present life before the rapture, they've become miserable already. And that's God's love of chastising them. If something happens to them in this present time, it's God's waking them up. And we should wake up. Before it happens to them, we must come to realize, and we can do the chastisement ourselves. So that's communion. Communion is also family, but we don't have much time for that. So the message about Barabbas is political. How do you look up the political setup? When they were taking communion, it was a political setup. When Moses was taking communion, Passover, it was a political setup. So the message, the revelations are infinite. It's inexhaustible, and we have not began to delve into it. We must commit our lives for that. That is the very main purpose of life. The reason we were born to die, and Christ was born to die. How do we live? We have to die in ourselves. And how do we die from ourselves? We have to die from this deception, this present perception of this world that we are. This present perception of this world that we just have to live only in this life and be lukewarm. Just be carried away and wait for the tribulation to come. We can ask our children right now, ask our brethren, what is your plan? How do you plan that your child will be part of the rapture? So that should be our discussion in our family as we see the Passover coming around. Okay, so our time is, we have 14 minutes to go. Any last questions?
Okay, brother. Yes. I do have a question. Last question. So you mean, brother, that it is okay to a true believer to be a what do you call this? Have a entanglement with the politics, or they can, for example, like Joel Villanueva. Does a Christian allowed to be for example, president to run in the presidency, and why? Because what I see is the politics is in the politics that we currently live at is very corrupt.
It's like this. It's not a sin to participate. The sin is losing sight of God's revelation. You get the picture? What is sin is
Yes, sir.
missing out on God's word and immersing yourselves too much on that. And we have churches that have immersed themselves. They've used the gospel to preach a national recovery program. Their message becomes like Israel, like the kingdom. They've missed out. You remember Moses when he was given the Passover? He was challenging the Pharaoh. It's politics. Okay? Today, if we commemorate the communion, there is a message of Christ and Barabbas. There's a message for us today. Study the SNS tabulation. What should be our outlook? What should be our participation? Up to what extent must we participate? And Christ said, give that is Caesar's to Caesar, and give what is God's to God. And he said, who is appearing on that coin? Caesar's face. Or give it to Caesar. It's his face. So, We are part of this government. We're part of this world. We can do certain things to improve ourselves, scientific, economic, ecological, but we must not ignore the important message of God. Look at Cornelius. He was a Roman centurion. He's still fulfilling his duty as a soldier, as a captain. But he's a believer. He became a believer. So the rest of his time, if there's no rebellion, he will devote himself to studying the word. He will devote himself to hearing the gospel and fulfilling it in his family. When Peter commanded, let all your families be baptized. Remember, all your family, they had no say in this. That's assert authority. That's part of the revelation. And he obeyed. Every one of you get rebaptized. Not rebaptized, baptized. It could be rebaptism or baptism, whatever it is. It's symbolic. But they all obeyed. They all obeyed Jesus Christ. They all obeyed Peter's commandment. So, politics aside. Now, in the future, when the Roman emperor will require everyone to worship him, the centurion can give his life. Because if you would not worship the emperor, you should be put to death. The emperor is not restricting you from worshiping Christ, but he wants you to worship him additionally. That's politics. That's politics. And what did they decide? They did not decide that they didn't want to. Today, if you are in school, you must acknowledge LGBTQ community. Now that's politics. What should we do? Of course, they're striving. Some Christians in the Congress are trying to fight the truth out. But you cannot win it out. But what should you stand for? You are in school. You are in work. You should tell the truth. You should share the truth. Even though they see you as a bigot. Okay? That is part of politics today. That ideology of activism, that's the spirit of Barabbas. It might not be an open rebellion like the Communist Party or
So,
the NPA.
okay, brother. So you're saying that we Christians are also a rebellion. What do you call this? A an activist because we are preaching the gospel, right? So it means that we are also an activist because we are preaching the truth.
Our activism, you can use the word activist, but not the same as Barabbas. The spirit of Barabbas is you missed out on the picture. Our activism is very different from them. Our activism is to evangelize people from this deceived world. Even our children, they're deceived. We must evangelize them. Deuteronomy 6:7. We must Bible study them. We must share them this truth. You must command them to listen and have sharing with us. You must train them to report to others, to witness to others. That's the right activism. The wrong activism is protesting for the gay community. Even protesting for abortion. You know, abortion is wrong. And in the United States, they're protesting against abortion. But this world belongs to the devil. They think the government should be of God. No, the government today is partially of God, but not thoroughly of God, but it's all of the devil. Romans chapter 13, 1, 2, 3, 4. They are evil, but they hold the sword not in vain. Okay, I think my time, it's 8:23. Okay, so I thought Debcon was reminding me. So, okay, we don't have much time left. Prepare some music, JP David, and please give us a closing prayer. We can continue our discussion in Tagalog after this live broadcast. So I'm going to upload this, and maybe you could edit for a perfect video. Because the initial part was, well, maybe we can check it out. How Debcon was able, how others had shared. I don't think the screen sharing was perfect. But anyway, we can check it out. Okay, so please give us a closing prayer.
Let's
Anyone?
pray.
JP
Let us
David, please
pray.
prepare some music. Okay.
Let us pray, Brother Francis.
Yes.
Am I here?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Let us pray. Let us bow our heads. Father God of our Lord Jesus Christ, thank you for a 2 hours complement to through our topic today, choosing Barabbas. Let your anointing for each one of us to receive the significance as taught by your messenger, Brother Francis Chan. May you enlarge his boundaries and more strength, more revelation. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, all of these things. We give you back all the glory and honor and power praises. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen.
Okay, so what is your song?
Walking on the road to Jerusalem. The time had come to sacrifice again. My 2 small sons, they walked beside me on the road. The reason that they came was to watch the lamb. Daddy, Daddy, what will we see there? There's so much that we don't understand. So I told them of Moses, Father Abraham. Then I said, dear children, watch
The Lamb. Let us be in the spirit of commemorating the coming communion Passover,
in Jerusalem today.
remembering the sacrifice of Christ and what the implication.
Must be sure the land doesn't run away. Then I told them of Moses, Father Abraham. Then I said, dear children,
What's the
watch
land? What's the land?
when we reached the city. I knew something must be wrong. There were no joyful worshipers, no joyful worship songs. I stood there with my children in the midst of angry men. Then I heard the crowd cry out,
By you.
we tried to leave the city, but we could not get away. Forced to play this drama, a part I did not wish to play. Why upon this day were men condemned to die? Why were we standing here?
What minute?
I still can hear his angry voice screaming at the crowd. A part I did not wish to play. Why upon this day were men condemned to die? Why were we standing here where soon they would pass by? I looked and said, even now they come. The first one cried for mercy, the people gave him none. The second one him as he struggled. I watched him as he fell. The cross came down upon his back. The crowd began to yell. In that moment, I felt such agony. In that moment, I felt such loss. Until a Roman soldier grabbed my arm and screamed, "You! Carry